Go. You're on. Oh, you're on.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. The topic that we're going to be, Mr. Hashem, discussing is a very broad one. It's a very broad one with many, many different parts. The concept in general is what is the goal in Klal Yisrael's destiny? What's our destiny, basically? We know that in Chazal, the term that we find very often to describe what the destiny of Klal Yisrael is, what we're all hoping for and looking for, is Olam Haba. What exactly is Olam Haba? What does Olam Haba mean? Is it something that's completely spiritual? Is it something on earth? What exactly is taking place in Olam Haba, and when does it happen, and how does it happen? So the truth is, this topic is obviously very, very broad, as I said, but it also shows it brings out a very major point, which is that there's a very big difference in the perspective of the Rishonim and in the perspective of Jewish tradition between those that have a tradition of Kabbalah and those that do not have a tradition of Kabbalah. So just to explain a little bit, the Rambam, as we know, was the greatest Jewish philosopher of all time, right? The writer of Moreh Nevuchim. The Rambam's feeling was like this. We know the Rambam, everyone agrees to the concept of Tchias HaMesim, of the resurrection of the dead. Everyone agrees to such an idea. The Mishnah and Sanhedrin, everyone has to believe in Tchias HaMesim. The Rambam wrote the 13 principles of faith, and principle number 13 is that there's such a thing as the resurrection of the dead. The Rambam had the following problem. The Rambam's problem was, first of all, why is it important for there to be a resurrection? Why is that important? And number two, and this is more important, is that the Rambam understood, and this is where the whole philosophy of the Rambam comes from. The Rambam understood that the purpose of creation is for a human being to attach himself to Hashem. That's the purpose of creation. The reason why everything we want to experience today is to experience attachment to Hashem. What the Rambam therefore felt, though, that the only way how human being can fully experience that attachment to Hashem is, Dovi, we're here. I'm saying we have a lot of interference. I don't know if that's...
If everybody could just mute themselves until you need to say something when we open it up for questions, that'll help.
Okay. All right. So the Rambam has the following. Again, the purpose of creation is to attach himself to Hashem. But the Rambam feels that the only way how that to really happen is for the neshama to be unhindered and unbound and not held back by the body. So the Rambam understood, Rambam's perspective was that for the ultimate purpose of creation cannot be body and soul together. Because whenever there's a body, whenever there's something physical, physicality will always hold back the neshama from really experiencing Hashem's presence. And therefore the Rambam had a problem. If Tchias HaMesim is this unbelievable thing that we're all waiting for, first, why? If anything, once a person passes away, then that should be it. That's the goal. The goal is body and soul to separate, because the body, because it's physical, will always hold the neshama back. So why in the world would Hashem take the neshama after it's separated from the body, and after it's now delighting with Hashem's presence and soaring very, very high? Why would Hashem punish the body by sending it back down after the resurrection of the dead? Therefore, the Rambam's perspective on Olam Haba and Tchias HaMesim is the following. The Rambam therefore holds, and he writes this in a number of places, the Rambam held that it's true. The goal, the end zone, the destiny of the Jewish person and the Jewish people is soul without body. Soul without body. The goal, the ultimate purpose of creation is for a Jew to experience attachment to Hashem, and in order for that to really, for that experience to be all that it can be, you cannot be held back by a body. So why is there a concept of Tchias HaMesim? So the Rambam says very simple. Throughout Jewish history, we know that the vast majority of Jewish history has been in exile, has been in Golus. And Golus means a person, having to put in a lot of effort to make a parnasa. A person suffering in exile means the guy necessarily, sometimes causes problems. It means without a Beis Hamikdash, without sacrifices. The Rambam felt that it's unfair for a person who's, let's say, born in the year 1560 and dies, sometime in 1670, never experienced the Beis Hamikdash, never experienced sacrifices, never saw prophecy. It's unfair to such a person. And therefore, if the ultimate purpose of creation is for him to experience, to attach himself to Hashem through all the mitzvahs that he does and all the effort that he puts into his avodah, to his Yiddishkeit, such a person, it's unfair for him to be born and live and die in a time period where he's unable to really maximize his full potential. Therefore, the Rambam felt that what Tchias HaMesim is that when Mashiach comes and the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt and suffering will be taken away and there won't be any sickness and everyone will be able to focus all their energy on doing mitzvahs, on accomplishing, on serving Hashem properly in this world, for the singular purpose of allowing all those people that because of outside circumstances throughout exile, they were unable to fully actualize all their potential and to do and to accomplish and to keep all the mitzvahs that they wanted to accomplish. They're going to come back and live a life during the time period of Mashiach without suffering, without dealing with pogroms and holocausts, without dealing with any problems of stresses in Parnassa or anything like that. And they'll be able to focus to do whatever they want, what they really wanted to do in their first lifetime. That's what Tchias HaMesim is for. But they will die. After that lifetime is over, they will die, and they eventually will go to where everyone is destined, which is completely spiritual. So in the world of the Rambam, the destiny of Klal Yisrael is soul without body. That's the destiny of every single person. That's the destiny of Klal Yisrael. It's just the reason why we have a time period called Tchias HaMesim is to allow those people that suffered tremendously during their lifetime to experience a good life, a happy life, a life where they're able to accomplish everything they wanted to accomplish, and then pass away and go on to Olam Haba, which is soul without body. That's the perspective of the Rambam. And again, all this is coming because the Rambam understood that there's no way for dveikus, for attachment to Hashem to take place with the body. Because the body is physical, and physicality always hinders and holds back the neshama. And therefore, the ultimate goal the ultimate picture cannot include the body. The body cannot be part of it. The only reason why we believe in Tchias HaMesim is because without Tchias HaMesim, it's unfair for all those millions and millions of Jews that suffered during their lifetime. It's unfair for them because they were not able to do as many mitzvahs and to learn as much as they possibly wanted to because of outside circumstances. So Tchias HaMesim is there to allow them, to give them a second chance of life, to give them a lot, and therefore it's going to happen during Mashiach, which is anyway a time of happiness and peace on earth and all good things. So we'll give them a second chance to do everything they wanted to accomplish, and then after their lifetime they'll pass away and they'll go on to Olam Haba, which is soul without body, which is the purpose. That's the perspective of all those that do not have the tradition of Kabbalah. Now, again, how did it happen that you could have such a major part of Torah, the inner workings of Torah, that somehow did not make its way in the Rambam's tradition? That's a very, very important question, and it's something hopefully maybe down the line we'll get to. It's very, very important, and but again, it's beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now. But this is the perspective of those Rishonim that are philosophical based, that they cannot. An underlying point is that they cannot perceive the body being part of the ultimate destiny of the Jewish people, because if the ultimate destiny is attachment to Hashem, the body cannot be part of it. The body is nothing more than a hindrance of that. So Tchias HaMesim is just to allow the person a second chance in life, to give them the ability of doing everything that they wanted to accomplish but were unable to because of outside circumstances. But even once that's a specific lifetime during Mashiach, and once that lifetime passes, the person passes away, and then goes to Olam Haba, which is completely spiritual, completely not in this world, and it's soul without body. And that experience of soul without body, that's where the neshama remains forever, all eternity, in a constant state of attachment to Hashem, rising from level to level in its understanding and its awareness and its attachment to Hashem. But that's all soul without body. This is the perspective of the Rambam. So I think just for today, that's just what we'll go with. And then over the next shiur, we'll be discussing where do the Mekubalim, what's their perspective and how do they deal with Tchias HaMesim, and is their perspective of the Jewish destiny, how different is it from the Rambam? And then we'll discuss how it affects our life today and what path, so to speak, the Jewish people have chosen. Is it the world of the Rambam or the Mekubalim, as we'll see? Okay?
So we got one question written in. I have everybody muted, so I'll open it up in a minute, but let's deal with the first question first before we get the interference, and then I'll unmute everybody. And this question, I think, it's a very good follow-up question, which is, according to the Rambam, those who are actually able to realize their potential, are they not going to experience Kriyas HaMesim?
So it's a very good question. So the Rambam writes that, practically speaking, it's almost impossible for a person to have actualized all his potential until Mashiach comes. Because even if a person was, let's say, for example, living during the times of the first Beis HaMikdash, during Shlomo HaMelech, which was, one of the most amazing times to live in. You had a Beis HaMikdash, you had sacrifices, but says the Rambam, at the end of the day, people still got sick, you still got a cold once in a while. So at the end of the day, life wasn't perfect. It was very, very good and very, very pleasant. And for the most part, people didn't have to have such a problem with parnasa, but still, people still suffered. There was still pain in the world. There were still, issues of sickness and parnasa issues and the stresses of life. And therefore, says the Rambam, practically speaking, everyone's going to have to come back to get a second chance, because there is no such thing as having a perfect life until Mashiach comes. Because when Mashiach comes, there's no sickness, there's no parnasa issues, there's no stresses. It's just a life focused on Yiddishkeit, focused on serving Hashem. And because of that, practically speaking, says the Rambam, everyone's going to have to come back to really experience life to its fullest when Mashiach comes.
Okay, we got another question is, what if you fail your second chance?
That's a good question. So, Baruch Hashem, it's not possible. And the reason for that is because Chazal do say that when Mashiach comes, listen, there's a general rule in Yiddishkeit, which is that things happen progressive. It doesn't happen in a second. Things happen, things evolve. So Chazal do say that when Mashiach comes, the Yitzhar is going to be taken away. It's going to be taken away. Again, is that going to happen immediately, or are there stages? Are there steps in the taking away of the Yitzhara? That's, again, something that hopefully we'll get to over the course of the Shiurim. But the reason why it's not possible for it to be messed up is because the only reason why we mess up, so quote unquote, the first time is because we have the Yitzhara, because there are stresses in life. But once those obstacles are taken away and the Jew is able to do what he naturally wants to do and what he's naturally driven to do, there's no question of failure. And therefore the Rambam understands that us giving a second chance, not much of a chance. The point is that once we give them that lifetime to experience Mashiach, the truth of Yiddishkeit is so clear and so vivid, and the Yitzhar is not an obstacle anymore. There's no question that we're going to accomplish everything we're set out to accomplish. So there shouldn't be any fear about that.
Okay, the follow-up to that is, though, then what's the point of doing that if we're basically just doing what our instincts say? We're like animals. We're not really accomplishing.
Right, that's a very good question as well. The Rambam, this has to do with, again, another basic principle in the philosophy of the Rambam. The Rambam understood that the main way for a Jew to experience attachment to Hashem is not so much through the effort. See, you have to understand there's many things that, as from Jews living in the 21st century, we take for granted as far as the philosophy of Yiddishkeit. And the reason for that, and there are certain things that we have sort of just part of the culture of Yiddishkeit that was very much affected by the Mekubalim, by the Kabbalists. The Rambam, as a non-Mekubal, as a non-Kabbalist, completely, his philosophy completely defined based on human philosophy, does not see effort as something that is the goal. The Rambam understands that the main way how a person attaches himself to Hashem is through his intellectual ability to perceive and to understand Hashem. And therefore the Rambam understands, that's why the Rambam looks at the body as something that holds us back. Because the body gives us the ability of fighting, it gives us urges, gives us animalistic Yetzaharas and so on. The Rambam doesn't see that as something good. The Rambam sees that as holding back the potential of the neshama from perceiving and understanding and connecting to Hashem. So you're right. There's no question that when Mashiach comes, if the Yitzhar is taken away, there's a certain level of effort which is going to be lacking. But the Rambam doesn't see that as a bad thing. The Rambam sees all effort as coming from something that's deficient in the human being, which is coming from his body, coming from his physical nature. So again, there are many things that our hashkafa, our philosophy, is molded by Kabbalah, and therefore a lot of things that the Rambam says seems very foreign and very different from what we're used to. But this is the perspective of the Rambam. And again, we're going to see soon how the Mekubalim are completely different, and how the hashkafa, how the philosophy of the Jewish people throughout time has definitely been molded and affected specifically by Kabbalah more than it has been by philosophy. But again, this is a major difference between the Rambam and others.
We have one more written question follow-up, but I also then I think it's a short answer, so I want to open it up to the call-ins. And this was, how long does the period last? Is it until we all accomplish all of our goals? Is there some kind of a time frame on it?
So the Rambam doesn't say specifically how long each person's lifetime will be during the second chance of Mashiach. He doesn't say that. I would assume that it's catered to each person. If each person, let's say you have, for example, a person who suffered tremendously, who wasn't given a quote unquote a fair shot because of the situation of his life. So presumably he will be given X amount of time to accomplish what he was supposed to accomplish, what he can accomplish. A person who relatively had an easy life and accomplished a great deal, so his lifetime would be less. And again, this wouldn't be considered a tragedy at that time for a person to die relatively young, because that whole second lifetime, it's understood to just be there to fill in the gaps. All you're doing is just filling in those missing points that you weren't able to accomplish in your first lifetime. So everyone's lifetime will be different at that point, but the one common theme is that that second chance that we all are going to have, according to the Rambam, has a limit. It has an end. And after that lifetime is over, each person, whatever years they're given, then they go on to what real Olam Haba is, the next world, which is soul without body. That's the perspective of the Rambam.
Okay, so we have one more question coming in, but I first want to give people who are listening patiently a chance to speak. But just remember, I'm going to unmute all. It's going to be a little bit of chaos, so try to speak one at a time. Okay. If anybody else, anybody on the phones has anything, please go ahead. Okay, so
I just want to thank you.
There were two other questions that came in by writing, which is, first of all, what are the Rambam sources? Where is he basing it on?
Yeah. Okay. The main source that the Rambam comes from, there are really two. There are two sources of the Rambam. First of all, it's his whole philosophical perspective. Logic in his mind. That's number one. That according to him, logic dictates that Olam Haba cannot have body. And second of all, the main source of the Rambam is a Gemara. There's a Gemara that says in Sanhedrin, the Gemara says that in Olam Haba, quote unquote, there is no eating, below Shia, there is no drinking. Ella tzadikim yoshim, rather all there is in Olam Haba are tzadikim that are sitting, va'atrosem beroshem, their crowns are on their heads, v'nenim miziv hashchina, and derive benefit, pleasure from the divine presence. That's what the Gemara says. The Rambam sees that Gemara as a description of the destiny of the Jewish people as being soul without body. That's what it means, without food, without drink. The Rambam understood that to mean that means there's no body, because if there's a body, you need to eat and drink to support that body. That's the main source of the Rambam as far as within Chazal. And again, the meaning of the Gemara is that without food or drink, there's no body. The crown on the head means the intellectual supremacy of the soul, and deriving pleasure from experiencing, from understanding Hashem, to the capability of each soul as it's able to do. That's the main source as far as within Chazal of the Rambam. But again, there's two main things. There's the logic where the Rambam deduced this idea from, and that's the specific Gemara that he comes from as well. And again, the Mekubalim, as we'll see, completely different from this, and they redefine that Gemara to mean something different, as we'll see.
And another question came in. Unless anybody wants to jump in, I want to give people a chance on the phone. The other question is, so after a person dies a second time, they go to Olam Haba and everybody else is still in the Mashiach?
Yeah, 100%. That's why theoretically in the Rambam, you could really say that there are people in Olam Haba right now. Because Olam Haba really just means soul without body, whatever the neshama going into heaven and experiencing Hashem's presence. Just that the neshama is taken away from there and put back down a second time to give it a chance to accomplish even more. But yeah, once the person passes away, then he goes to Olam Haba and leaves the world down here. That's exactly what happens. Yeah, again in the Rambam. So
Olam Haba is not really the proper terminology, right? It's not
a
future.
Olam Haba, it's not future. It's present as well. It's just for those while we're still down here. That's something that's going to be our future. But Olam Haba is something that is going on right now for those people that have passed away. That's what the Rambam holds.
Okay, so we don't have any other questions on the chat. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in. We'll give a last shot. If not, we'll say thank you and we'll pick it up next week. Anybody else? Okay, so Jesse, thank you, and we'll pick it up next week, and we'll send out an email. I think we'll try to stick with this topic, right? To go through a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely it needs time.
If anybody has any feedback on the topic or the choice of topic or particulars, email me during the week, and so by next Monday night or Tuesday morning, we should have y'all see our topic so he can prepare. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Be well. Thank you again.